Mountaineer Nation, let's ride.
But Don Nealon's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread. As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of WVU Football.
Here is Harris in trouble. Stiff arms the would-be tackler. Comes out over the 25 to 20. Goes around about at the 15 to 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
Takes the Slater one-on-one with the defender. Look at Pat White.
West Virginia football. You know what that's about. They don't know what it's about. West Virginia football. Football, people. They can shoot up on fire. No more air and helmet.
Let them know. Leave no doubt tonight. Leave no doubt tonight. No doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Boot.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
And now, the show brought to you by Mountaineer fans for Mountaineer fans, the Country Roads Webcast.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into Season 6, Episode 163 of the CRW Podcast, where we're going to preview the upcoming game against Duquesne and, of course, give our predictions here towards the tail end of the episode. But joining me to help me talk about this upcoming Mountaineer game, which will be the home opener for our West Virginia Mountaineers in the 2023 football season, is, of course, my co-host, Steven. How's it going, Steven?
Just chilling after a long day at work, man. It's a hot day today, man.
I feel that, yeah. It's gonna be a hot few days. Probably gonna be a hot one up there in Morgantown Saturday. So it looks like too. Good weather, but dry and hot.
Yep, yeah. It's a kind of a classic first game weather for WVU.
Right. Yeah, should be a good crowd though. Should be a good turnout, and looking forward to getting into it and talking a little bit about Duquesne. And we'll do that coming up here in our main segment where we'll preview the game and, of course, give our key to victory and score predictions. And then we'll wrap up the episode while talking about some games around the conference and look at those matchups. But before we do that, let's kick off these podcast episodes the way we always like to, with a little bit of Mountaineer news. All right, leading off Mountaineer news, we're going to kick it off with some injury updates. There was some information that we didn't get ahead of the game against Penn State, which led to some questions of why we didn't see some players that we expected to see. A lot of those being on the offensive side. Wide receiver E.J. Horton being one of those. He was a speedster transfer from Marshall that we've heard a lot about. Unfortunately, he is still out and will miss this upcoming game against Duquesne as well. However, he is expected to return for the backyard brawl, so that could be a little wrench to throw at Pitt, somebody they haven't seen film on as far as how West Virginia plans to use him. And then another speedy wide receiver, Jashawn Polk, a transfer from Kent State that was believed to help West Virginia as a slot receiver and potentially in the return game as well. Missed the first game due to injury, but he is expected to return for this game against Duquesne. And then last, but certainly not least, is a true freshman that we've been hearing a lot about. We've talked about a lot here on the Country Roads Webcast YouTube channel, and he's a guy that I'm really excited about personally, and I think Mountaineer Nation is going to like and find to be a fan favorite, as I think West Virginia may have found another freshman phenom at the running back position for the second consecutive year. This time it's Jaheim White. He unfortunately suffered a bit of an injury there late in fall camp, and that's why we didn't see him in the first game of the season. I know a lot of people were asking why we did not, but he's expected to be ready to go for this game against Duquesne, so we'll get to see the home run hitting running back that the Mountaineers have added to the backfield, adding a different dimension there to the backfield than they've had in recent years with great speed and shiftiness, and I'm excited about that freshman. Asani Redwood's a defensive lineman that was a sack specialist in high school. We've been waiting to see him make his Mountaineer debut after the season-long injury he suffered last year. He still has yet to be fully recovered from, so he remains out for this game and probably will be out for at least a couple more weeks. And then Marcus Floyd, that's another player that we know is injured at the cat safety position. Missed the first game as West Virginia only played 3 safeties total across the 2 positions. But no update has been given on his injury status yet from Coach Brown, although he updated these other players. So in regards to injury updates here in Mountaineer News, Steven, any comments there?
Never like to see anybody hurt, but glad to get to see Jaheim White after everything that we've been hearing about him. Like to see a little bit more production out of him this week, so we can kind of save CJ and Jalen a little bit more for next week when we play, that other team from the city of Pittsburgh. But, but yeah, I'm hoping that we get to see at least some of Asani Redwood this year. I know that's kind of the sad way that has worked out for him so far.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. Hopefully, we will get to see him, and I think when we do, he's going to really bolster that defensive line a little bit. But like you said, you never like to see somebody injured, but I think in regards to a guy like E.J. Horton, that's the silver lining, is that big one that we're looking at in week 3 looks like when he'll return, and that could, like I said, that could surprise Pitt. And if he does return for that game, I'm going to go ahead and make my bold prediction right now. If E.J. Horton's first game, his debut, is against Pitt in the backyard brawl, he's going to make a big play. Chunk play, explosive play, 40-plus yard reception. He's going to get behind the defense with that speed. Maybe it's a touchdown, maybe it isn't, but that's my bold prediction right now if he comes back for that game.
I like it. I absolutely like it. Very likely, too. Not so bold prediction, in my opinion.
I hope so. After all we've heard, you would think so, right?
Yeah. But, we've heard a lot, from this coaching staff.
True. We've been fooled before, so you never know, but fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed that this one's true. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so having said that, next up in Mountaineer News, wanted to just give a little bit of an update on Mountaineers in the NFL currently with the NFL season about to kick off. So we had a great source to be able to do so, and that, of course, is our friends over at WV Sports Now. Mike Asti writing a great article on the Mountaineers currently in the NFL for the upcoming season, and want to encourage you guys to head over to WVSportsNow.com for tons of great Mountaineer sports content, but you can also find our show there, and you can find it on their YouTube channel as well as ours. And if you're tuned into that version here, watching the video version of this episode of the CRW podcast, be sure, hit the like button, give us a thumbs up, really helps not only this video's performance, but future videos performances on the channel as well. And if you're a West Virginia fan and you haven't already, be sure, hit the subscribe button. Helps us, and it helps you as it helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. And we appreciate you tuning in on the audio side. If you're one of the listeners to this episode, as you can find it on any podcast platform you like, just search Country Roads Webcast. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, you name it. I appreciate you tuning into this episode, though, whether you're reviewing it or listening to it. And having said that, continuing on in Mountaineer News here, updating the Mountaineers in the NFL. The Arizona Cardinals have Kaiser White at the linebacker position, and Dante Stills made the roster, both those guys on the active roster. The Baltimore Ravens have added Darryl Worley to the practice squad with the new rule here recently in the NFL that you can add, any player to the practice squad. They don't have to be youngsters. And that goes also for Cincinnati Bengals adding Will Grier to their roster. We saw him put on a show in the preseason finale for the Cowboys as they let him kind of have an audition for other teams as they traded for Trey Lance. The Cincinnati Bengals add Grier to the practice squad. Tony Fields remains with the Browns there at the linebacker position in his 3rd year. David Sills, previously with the Giants the past couple of seasons, unfortunately did not make their squad this season, but was picked up by the Denver Broncos and added to their practice squad. The Packers still hanging on to Rasul Douglas. As we know, he signed that pretty nice contract last year after performing really good with them the past couple of seasons. The Giants have Mark Lewinsky, the offensive lineman, the guard, formerly from West Virginia, now in his 9th season in the NFL. And we know Bryce Ford Wheaton went undrafted, but was signed by the Giants, was looking like he was probably going to make the roster, but unfortunately suffered the torn ACL towards the end of preseason, so he is on the injured reserve with the Giants, but on the roster there. The Dolphins have David Long, superstar linebacker, one of the awesome tacklers in recent memory at WVU. He's now in his 5th year in the NFL. Colton McKivitz with the 49ers in his 4th year, and he's actually looking like he's lining up to be a starter. So that's pretty awesome. The lone NFL pick that Neil Brown has had since being with the Mountaineers looks like he's found his way to the starting lineup with the 49ers. And then, of course, Geno Smith back with the Seahawks, his 11th year in the NFL. His resurgence well documented last year. They wrote him off, but he ain't right back. Had an amazing season and hopefully set to have an even better one this year and get the Seahawks back to the playoffs again. And then on the practice squad for the Jets, former West Virginia offensive lineman Adam Pankey, and Trevon Wesco is now with the Tennessee Titans. So any thoughts on Mountaineers in the NFL this season, Steven?
Well, two things that really stand out to me, and both of them are quarterbacks. One, I'm really disappointed that Will Grier didn't get a better opportunity than a practice squad opportunity out of this. But I do think that eventually he'll find his way back onto a third or second string on somebody's roster here in the next few years. But that one really kind of disappoints me. But the other one is my main man Geno there. I gotta ride with him always. I got him on 2 of my fantasy teams this year, so I'm really invested.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all.
And I drafted DK also.
I was about to say you might as well get the combo, but being the Panthers fan I had to get Bryce Young, but I didn't take him, or I waited. I took him late. I got Jalen Hurts like first round first, and then waited and got Bryce Young. I gotta try and watch myself because I'll be biased and then end up with like 5 Panther players on my roster, and I'm like, well, this isn't doing me any good.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. In one of the leagues that I got Geno in, that's the cool thing about it. In one of them, he's my backup, but then in another one, I got a super flex league to where I can play 2 quarterbacks. And so I've got Justin Herbert as my starter, and then I got Geno as my flex QB. So
I like that. I like
the way that one's set up a lot.
Yeah,
where,
that's nice. I've never played one like that with 2 quarterbacks. That's pretty cool.
This will be my first one. I'm kind of interested to see how it goes.
Should be. I mean, it's going to be high scoring for sure.
Absolutely. I think I messed up though because I'm used to drafting in regular leagues, and what I usually do is draft a running back or a wide receiver. And in the 2 quarterback leagues, I've learned that it's definitely the safer bet to go with the quarterback in the first round of those, if you ever do one.
Yeah, okay, I'll keep that in mind if I ever do. But speaking of fantasy leagues, I mean, my college fantasy league, CJ, I mean, he put on for me last week. Hopefully, does it again. I'm gonna keep him in the starting lineup. I think for this game against Duquesne. Hopefully, gets me some more numbers. I'm loving the college fantasy football. I've done pretty good the past couple of years. Started off 1-0 this year, so we'll see how it goes.
Man, I started off really well in those leagues, and then for the past 2, this year just started, but I did lose week 1. I didn't make a very smart decision, and I kept Shadur Saunders on my bench, and then there was a couple other options that I could have flopped around. But one thing I do regret, I didn't get any WVU players this year. I usually at least snag one, but.
Yeah, I didn't get too many either. I'm not gonna lie. I got CJ early. I think I got him 2nd or 3rd round, and then I ended up getting Cole Taylor in one of the late rounds. But that's only 2 I got this year. Yeah,
slim pickings for them this year, man. Hopefully they can pick up the slack here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, hopefully somebody starts showing out and it'll be somebody we're trying to claim off waivers or something from WVU.
I was gonna say we're all gonna be fighting for him at one point or another, probably.
Right. But having said that, Steven, anything else you got for Mountaineer news? You're ready to move on to our main segment and talk about this matchup with the Duquesne Dukes in the home opener.
Hey man, I'm ready to get into this this highly anticipated affair between the Duquesne Dukies and the West Virginia Mountaineers.
Oh, Duquesne. Well, let's get into it then. No further ado, let's talk about the matchups, preview the game, provide our key to victory and our score predictions for West Virginia's season opening home game of the 2023 football season. Washington, Vanderbilt, Florida State, Arizona, Georgia Tech, and Kansas. That's the list that West Virginia is looking to not join this weekend, as those are the Power 5 teams that have lost to FCS programs just over the last 5 seasons, dating back to 2018. And West Virginia will be facing a good FCS program this weekend, as they will be taking on the Duquesne Dukes. and it's a team that they have faced in the past. This will be the 9th all-time meeting between the two programs. As you see, if you're watching on the video version here, we'll share the series history with you on the screen, but I will tell it for you guys listening on the audio side. 8 games, West Virginia leads the series 4-3. There's also been 1 tie, but Duquesne has won 3 of the last 4. However, none of these have come in recent history, with the last meeting between the two programs being back in 1935. So, opening thoughts, Steven, looking at the series history, hearing about the history of upsets that have happened to other Power 5 teams when facing FCS programs. This Duquesne team is not a bad program whatsoever, having won 5 out of the last 9 Northeastern Conference championship titles. How are you feeling about this matchup right now going into it? Just kind of opening thoughts.
Well, I feel like, this isn't the first time that we've played a well-tested, FCS level team. I can remember, I believe Georgia Southern was supposed to be pretty good whenever they came into Morgantown that year. I remember James Madison was supposed to be very good, even though I believe James Madison's moved up to Division I by now. But,
yeah, they've moved up 2020, I believe.
Yeah, but before we played them before.
We played them the year before they moved up, I believe. Yeah.
Right, and then we've also played them. I remember we played them, I believe, 2006, around that time.
That sounds right.
Around that time, anyway. But anyway, we've played teams that are upper level FCS before. So not to say that West Virginia couldn't handle it otherwise, but we can handle that height. But I think that West Virginia being in the position that they're in right now, it may be a little bit scary. You're coming off of what one may call a disappointing game at Penn State, and then you're going into the backyard brawl the very next week against Pitt. You don't really want to get caught in a trap game in this and kind of be looking forward to next week. And they did just come off of a 49-7 win, so they can score points. So we've got to be able to. Our secondary does kind of scare me a little bit, but from what I've been able to read, they're a little bit more run heavy than they are with the pass.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I've been able to gather as well. That 49-7 win Steven referenced there over Edinboro University in week 1 for the Dukes. So they're coming in at 1-0 while West Virginia enters at 0-1. Duquesne put up 390 total yards in that game, held Edinboro to 170. They passed for 152, ran for 238, averaged 6 yards per carry. Interesting thing to look at to me with that matchup in their first game is that they only threw the ball 19 times versus running it 40 times. And with what West Virginia showed against Penn State, I think that bodes well matchup-wise for West Virginia.
Absolutely.
But what I'm going to be looking at, though, is as far as Duquesne's game plan for this game is going to tell me a lot about what other opponents and teams think of West Virginia based on what they put on tape. Because if you're an opposing coach watching the tape, even if you're this Duquesne team that ran 40 times and passed 19 in game 1, and you're looking at West Virginia in that game against Penn State, how are you thinking the best way to attack them would be? I mean, you're probably going to want to throw the ball around a little bit. So if Duquesne comes out in this game and is a little bit more balanced or even leans more pass heavy, that to me is going to tell me that other teams are not really respecting West Virginia's secondary at this time when they're watching them on tape, because that'd be a complete flip of their game plan from week 1 to week 2, just simply because of how they feel like they match up against West Virginia.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see, and it'll be really interesting to see how West Virginia responds to that as well, and to see what kind of if we'll still go zone or if we'll play a little bit more man. I would assume that if they can't get this zone issue under control, then that would possibly be a fix. But you can't go man every game all game. That's
unfortunately.
That's the disadvantage of that.
Unfortunately, especially if you don't have feel like you have the favorable matchups, which West Virginia should have in this game, but it's not going to be the case, all the time throughout the season, of course. And speaking of matchups, as far as this one is concerned, Duquesne does have some good players on their roster. Some standout ones from week one on offense. They had a wide receiver, DJ Powell, that really had a good game. 3 catches, but 2 of those went for touchdowns. Ended up with 57 receiving yards. And then they had a defensive back in Aiden Garnes, who ended up with half a tackle for a loss, a pass breakup, and then ended up with a pick 6 as well. Jumped the route and really looked good on that play. Their running back, Taj Butts, he's a redshirt sophomore. He transferred from Missouri, where he actually played in 6 games as a freshman at Missouri and even started in one of those. He had 108 yards and only 10 carries, so he seems more than capable, and they have a couple other younger backs that'll get carries as well. I think each of those had 40-plus rushing yards in their season opener as well. Their quarterback will be Darius Parentes. He wears number 7, 6 foot, 220-pound junior. He transferred in from Rhode Island after he started there as a freshman back in 2019. In their season opener, he went 7 of 13 for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their head coach is Jerry Smith, offensive coordinator Anthony Doria, and defensive coordinator Mike Craig. But let's talk a little bit about each sides of the ball there, Steven. Let's start with the Mountaineer offense going up against this Duquesne defense. I spoke a little bit about a cornerback there that made some plays for them in their season opener. They had another defensive back that was near the top, leading them in tackles. So seems like they have some solid players there on their defense that could test West Virginia and try and make things tough for this offense. Particularly, what are you expecting to see from West Virginia's offense going up against this Duquesne defense?
I would like to see us be aggressive. I would really like to see what this. I'm not saying that I want to see the playbook or anything, but I would like to see us try to at least take some shots downfield. I want to see a little bit of what Garrett's arm can do. If in a perfect world, I would really like to see some Rodney Gallagher. I would like to see some Nico in there. These are the games where, you want to see those types of things. I really don't know what to expect out of this game. I've really been saying that for the last 2 weeks now. I don't know what I really want to see out of this game that's going to impress me enough to make me a believer in this team. But I really just want to see the less conservativeness out of the offense. I'm not saying I want an 80-0 football game or nothing, but that'd be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, in a perfect world, that would be great. But I agree. I think ideally you want to get your young guys some experience in this game. I did a live stream on the Country Roads Webcast channel earlier this week, and I was talking about that briefly. I said if it was up to me, I would probably play Nico 3 quarters in this game, but I think we might see him play a half because I think you want to get him some experience because knock on wood, anything happens against Pitt, you want him to be ready so that you can still go out and get that win in the backyard brawl if you do need to turn to Nico for any type of reason. But I think, not only with him, but some of your other young guys as well that didn't really get action in that game against Penn State, the ones that did, they got to see an atmosphere that should have them battle tested for the rest of the season because they won't see another crowd that big. So any other atmosphere they see should really pale in comparison and they should be able to deal with it. But the players that didn't get a chance to play in that game, the guys we discussed in the injury report, the younger guys, the Jaheim Whites, the Rodney Gallaghers, get them on the field now so that they can, get used to West Virginia's home atmosphere a little bit and be ready for the bright lights and the craziness that they'll encounter in that week 3 matchup, because let's call a spade here. You're really trying to get ready for that week 3 game. We're expecting a win here, of course, as I'm sure all of Mountaineer Nation is. When you play an FCS team, West Virginia has done great against FCS teams in their history. I don't have any wood to knock on right now, but I wish that I did after saying that. But West Virginia is undefeated against FCS teams at 23-0 all time. In football. So hopefully that streak continues. You'd like to see that here. But as far as the Mountaineer offense going up against this Duquesne defense, I think establish the run early. I think, set the tone early because we know the recipe for upsets is, letting the inferior opponent, stick around too long. West Virginia nearly did that against Penn State, but they couldn't manage to get that to the 4th quarter. I think you don't want them to hang around ideally till, past, the first couple quarters, but you certainly don't want it to be a close game heading into the 4th quarter. So I think getting off to a fast start is going to be a key to this game for West Virginia for sure. As far as West Virginia's offense, I want to see improvements in the passing game. Hopefully, I think that Garrett might have been affected by nerves a little bit there. We talked about the massive crowd at Penn State. Maybe that caused some of the errant throws. Maybe a little bit of the timing was off there because of nerves, not only from him, but from members of the receiving corps as well. And then, of course, the great Penn State pass rush was there. But Duquesne's going to bring a good pass rush as well. That's what I'll say about this Duquesne defense. They're going to pin the rears back and come after West Virginia. So I think the West Virginia passing protection, I'm hoping to see it improve this week, and it's going to be tested, I believe, again. Hopefully it looks better. Hopefully Garrett looks better when under duress, and we see him not only make the right reads in the passing game, which I thought he did a lot of the times, but just missed the throw. But hopefully now he comes into his own in this game and makes a lot of those passes. I'd like to see Garrett have a big game in this, ideally, if however long he plays, if it's a half, 2, 3 quarters, whatever it is.
Yeah, just comfortability, really. You just want to see him look comfortable back there and be the leader that they've said that he's been. Because, we've seen it out of Garrett before, but, you really want to see him bounce back off of the – I don't think Garrett had a bad game on Saturday. I'd have a lot of people disagree with me on that. But I really think, with everything considered, I think Garrett had a pretty decent game. And I think a lot of the Penn State people would agree with that. But I just want to see him look like the man, I guess, out there. Because I think that Saturday could, personally for him, I don't think so, but it could have a chance to hurt his confidence a little bit.
Yeah, he needs to have a bounce back game for sure. That would really help it go a long way with that, building that confidence if we try and continue to see him improve as the season goes along, as I think that he will, because like you said, he really did do some good things in that opener, mainly with the game management side. I thought that stuff was really good. We didn't really have any crazy clock issues, or the penalties were down, all of that. He did a great job managing the team, managing the situations, really loud atmosphere. We didn't have hardly any false start penalties. And then, of course, no turnovers. That's the number one key that I think stood out, the biggest positive from his performance. And that, of course, is why this coaching staff and Neil Brown said they chose him as the starter, was decision-making and the way that he has taken care of the ball throughout fall camp. So hopefully it continues. If he continues to do those things that he did well and improve on those other aspects in which he left a little bit to be desired on some of those passing plays, I think that he has the chance to be really good this season and win West Virginia a good amount of games. But hopefully continues to go in that direction and trend that way. But how about the West Virginia running game? Do you think they've got a great chance to really, put up some numbers against this Duquesne team? We know Neil Brown as a head coach is undefeated when he runs for over 200 yards. That goes back to his time at Troy and here at West Virginia. The season opener, West Virginia ran for nearly 150 on a very good Penn State rushing defense. Do you think West Virginia crosses the 200-yard rushing mark? And do we see a lot of backs get carries?
Yes, I do. I think that it's going to be more running back by committee this week. Now that you got Gene White coming back, so I think that the running game is going to be very heavy. I know that I said that I want to see a lot more aggression out of the offense, and I want to see them possibly go over top a bunch. But I do expect them to be very, very run heavy. That's what our bread and butter is going to be this year on offense. You've already been able to tell that in week one with CJ running the ball as well as he did. But that's not to discredit the way that Jalen ran the ball. I think he did pretty well also. But, CJ's just a man amongst men, really. Yeah.
And to be honest, the way I would like to see CJ used this season, as we get into these big games starting with Pittsburgh from then on, I wouldn't mind to see him get a little bit of rest in this one, only get, 10 to 15 carries. I would not be mad at that at all. Let's get Jalen Anderson, Justin Johnson some work. And, of course, the aforementioned Jaheim White that we're really excited to see. Let them get some run and maybe even get DJ Oliver in there. He can play in up to 4 games and still redshirt. Let's see that big fella get out there and get some work. He's 240 pounds and runs a 4.5. So he's, the same weight as CJ, maybe even got a couple pounds on him, but few inches shorter, only 5'10". So that's a big guy stocky guy coming at you with some speed though that'll surprise you. So I'm excited to see him get on the field, and I'm hoping to see both those true freshmen, Jaheim White and Oliver, get some carries in this one. So I think West Virginia's run game will go over 200 yards rushing. I think Garrett Green will have a really good day running the ball. I think about against, was it Long Island, whatever I think it was last season. He ran for over 100 yards on them. So I think he'll have a good day rushing the football as well. So I think West Virginia will go for over 200, but I'm hoping to see it be a variety of guys and maybe see C.J. Donaldson have a little bit of a lightened workload in this one.
Yeah, ideally that's what you'd like to see, because you don't really want to see, CJ I think got a little too much workload too fast last year, and I think that's what led to his injury. You don't want to have that 2 years in a row, especially with someone with as much potential as what he has.
Absolutely. And then the number one thing that I want to see from the offensive passing game, besides what I mentioned with Garrett, is let's establish, some secondary receivers. I think, like we talked about previously, Devin Carter definitely looks like has the makings to be a great number one receiver for you. I like what I see from Cole Taylor at the tight end position, but let's see who else we can get involved there and get some more receptions, whether it's Cortez Braham, who we've heard a lot about, whether it's Jashawn Pope coming back from injury or, getting Rodney Gallagher in there. Maybe this is the game where we see the Traylon Ray they've been talking about all fall camp, but I definitely want to see us establish, some secondary guys there at that position.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. So there's some thoughts on the West Virginia offense and what we hope to see in this matchup against the Duquesne defense. Let's flip it over a little bit and talk about the West Virginia defense going up against the Duquesne offense. We talked a little bit about some players there on that Duquesne offense. DJ Powell at wide receiver, Taj Butts at running back, Parantes at quarterback. They'll be facing the West Virginia defense that's looking to improve from the way they played against Penn State, mainly the passing defense. I thought the rushing defense put on a pretty good performance against the Nittany Lions when they had the two great backs that they did, and West Virginia was more or less selling out to stop the run and trying to make Drew Aller beat him, which unfortunately he did, and it made the West Virginia secondary look a little suspect. I think that they would like to correct that and maybe get into the minds of Mountaineer Nation that this is an improved unit, and that remains to be seen. Hopefully they show a little bit better display this weekend against Duquesne. But Steven, what are you watching in terms of this defense for the Mountaineers going up against the Duquesne offense in the home opener?
I've mentioned it a few times. We know what our run defense can do. I won't be surprised when we shut down the run game. What I'm really looking for is the improvement of our secondary play. I really want to see them close the gap. I want to see guys ball hawk. I really want to see people swarm to the ball, and be there to swat it down or get an interception and get a turnover. But I guess that's one thing that I could lead into. I really want to see some turnovers this week. I know that last week, I thought that's pretty rare to not have a single turnover by any team in a football game. So I don't know. I'd like to see our defense be aggressive and get some turnovers this week, so that way it gives our offense a little bit more of a shot, and it really kind of gives not only them some confidence, but us some confidence in going into the rest of the season and what that they can do, and possibly show us how talented that Penn State defense or offense was.
Yeah. Hopefully we see a much improved looking West Virginia defense in this matchup. I think that we should, obviously, given the discrepancy with the opponent here in the level of play, Power 5 versus FCS. But I think when I'm watching it, I love the point that you made there about the turnovers. There weren't any in the first game, but West Virginia had a couple of opportunities. And of course, it's a game where you have to capitalize on those opportunities. And if West Virginia wants to be a successful team this season, they need to do that. We know last year they only had 4 interceptions total on the season. Absolutely abysmal. Have to improve on that this season. The positive light, if you're looking at that in week 1, is at least they were in there on those plays and had a chance to make those, both those being Beanie Bishop, once diving off a tipped ball, the other beautifully undercutting a route in the end zone and jumping past it, he nearly intercepted. Both of those were opportunities at turnovers that I think West Virginia needs to capitalize on. So hopefully we see a more opportunistic defense against this Duquesne attack. judging, by the way that they played in the first game, they may try and lean towards the run. But I talked about earlier with how West Virginia's secondary looked, that remains to be seen. They may try and, be a bit more balanced in this game. But either way, I think West Virginia should be prepared for that, and hopefully they're able to stop the run like they did against Penn State. If they do, they should be in good shape, and I think we'll see better play on that back end. I'd like to see West Virginia get a fourth safety involved if Marcus Floyd remains out. Like I said, no update there. But if he does, West Virginia is going to need to get someone at the cat safety position to spell Anthony Wilson at times. He can't go end to end every game, I don't believe. So I'm looking at that. And then at the cornerback position, I'm looking at those guys because Jacoby Spells didn't get involved in any action in this first game. And I think that's a guy that we all have high hopes for. And he wasn't involved in an injury update. I believe Neil Brown may have been asked, and it was not disciplinary, was not injury related. So just right now, the other four guys, Montre Miller, Malachi Ruffin, Wilson Lamp, and Beanie Bishop, appear to be a little bit ahead of the young Jacoby Spells. So I think this will be a game where we can see him get some action. So maybe he'll impress and try and climb up that depth chart because that's a guy with a high ceiling. But I think that's probably the position group people are watching a lot is the defensive backs. Hoping to see them improve this week against Duquesne, but I'm also paying attention to the linebackers. Mainly I'm watching because of that flip position in week 1 where they had Lee Koba playing the Will and Trey Latham playing the Mike. I want to find out if that's permanent or if that was just on a game plan basis for that Penn State game. So I'm going to be keeping a closer eye on that in this matchup. And I think, overall, I'm going to be watching and seeing how many guys they get on the field. I think they have a lot of defensive linemen. They may try and get more involved in this game. So hopefully we see some guys get on the field on that defense that we didn't see in week 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's pretty much all I got as far as the West Virginia defense against Duquesne offense. Anything you want to add there, Steven?
No, I just want to see a good full game out of both sides of the ball. I don't want to see any kind of, we had a good clean game in my opinion against Penn State relatively, but I just want to see a really clean game. I don't want to see any stupid penalties and any shooting ourselves in the foot, because if we're going into what I consider one of the hardest parts of our schedule after this game,
right?
I really want to see good, clean football and what we have the potential to be in these football games coming up in the next few weeks.
And this is the first of a 3-game homestand for West Virginia, the second of 3 straight Pennsylvania opponents, the first of 2 straight out of Pittsburgh. So I think ideally for the Mountaineers, you need to go 3-0 in this 3-game homestand, get to 3-1, and then you go on the road, take your shot at TCU, and you could really, get some momentum going and be on to something then. But let's take care of these at home, starting with this one against Duquesne. So that's offense, defense, but I didn't want to fail to mention special teams because I think, in our, post-game show and in our Penn State review, that's something that, didn't get a chance to touch on. But I thought West Virginia special teams looked pretty good against Penn State, definitely better than the Nittany Lions did, missing a couple field goals that they did. But, credit to West Virginia. I think they bothered that kicker on those attempts. Both of those, they almost got in there. They had a guy in there in his face, close to a block. And West Virginia also nearly blocked a punt. Neil Brown talked about it. It just went through our guys' hands. He said, if they'd had their hands together, the punt would have been blocked. And I think West Virginia has done some work on the return units this offseason. They've added some players that can help them. We talked about Deshaun Pope coming back from injury. Beanie Bishop was back there as West Virginia's kick returner, and they've talked about him maybe being a difference maker there. Didn't get a chance to return any against the Nittany Lions, but don't be surprised if West Virginia's return game makes a play against Duquesne. That could be an X factor for the Mountaineers. And we've talked about them, focusing on special teams in the past. This, Neil Brown's staff was good at it at Troy. They've been pretty good at special teams here at West Virginia for the most part. We've seen some blocks during their time here. The return games where they're looking to improve. But speaking of blocks, West Virginia still has the specialist, Anthony Del Negro, on the roster. So, he's always capable of blocking things. And Preston Fox had some good punt returns last season. I liked what I saw from the transfer kicker, Michael Hayes, doing the kickoffs and place kicking duty as he handled extra points. Oliver Strahl, great punts. I know he downed at least 2 inside the 20. Did shank one, but more good than bad. So didn't want to fail to mention special teams. I know we didn't really touch on it too much, so I wanted to touch on it a little bit there. And I think it's another advantage West Virginia, could have in this game, and maybe they could make a play there.
kind of surprised that we hadn't mentioned that yet, because we did almost get back there on one of those punts, and Jed Drenning called the 2 missed field. He didn't call 2 missed field goals, but he said to watch out for problems in the kicking game, because they had a new long snapper, a new holder, and they were trying out a new kicker.
Yep, he called that one spot on.
Yep.
2 misses in a row, then they replaced the kicker, and things went a little bit better for him from then on. But hopefully West Virginia, is able to continue good special teams play. And being a fan, I've always loved, kick return and punt return. I think those are some of the most exciting plays. Hopefully Beanie Bishop gets a chance on kick return, or Preston Fox gets a chance on punt return, and they make a play in this game. And like I said, a couple guys returning from injury, Deshaun Polk and Jaheim White, have also been talked about maybe having capabilities of returners. So who knows, maybe they get a shot there at some point in the game as well. But special teams, hopefully West Virginia can have an advantage there in this one as well. Those are our thoughts on the matchups there. Now it's time for, our favorite part on the preview and prediction shows here as we continue in Season 6, Episode 163 with our key to victory and score predictions. I'll lead off here, key to victory, Steven. Me personally, I talked about it briefly a little bit earlier. I think the key to victory in this game is a fast start and try and, for lack of a better term, put Duquesne away quickly. So then in the second half, or as early as possible, you can get some young guys, some experience that you're going to need, throughout the season, when you're going to need some more depth that's going to be called upon as this season progresses. So I think for me, get off to a fast start. Don't let them hang into the game and too long and think that they can play with you, because then they start to believe it, and then they will play with you, and then that's when upsets happen. And you don't want West Virginia to be added to that list of teams that I talked about as we began this main segment. So for me, the key to avoiding that fate is getting off to a fast start, and that's my key to victory in this one for the Mountaineers. What about you?
I'm gonna say sound football. I'm gonna stick to that theme with this episode. I think that if West Virginia just plays clean and comes out and plays the brand of football that we've been hearing about all off season, and about how well we're supposed to function as a group in some of these units, offensive line, defensive line, running backs, all of these guys, then I think that we shouldn't have any problem putting the game away pretty early, like you're saying. So that's going to be my key to victory, is just playing sound football and cleaning up any mistakes that they might have.
I like it. Hopefully keep those penalties low, keep it at 0 turnovers, and let's continue those trends that they started in week 1. Like you put it, sound football. I think that's a great way to put it, and I hope to see it in this game. Great key to victory. But now it's that time. It's score prediction time. What are you thinking here in this one against Duquesne?
I think West Virginia should do a pretty good job of scoring points. I don't think that they're going to do a very good job of stopping Duquesne of scoring points, however. I think that it's going to be a 2-score game, but I think West Virginia is going to pull out 42. I'll say 42-30.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I didn't see enough out of that secondary last week.
I was not expecting that.
I'm sorry, but if they scored 49 points last week, I know it was, albeit, Edinburgh, West Virginia's secondary has got to show me a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I got West Virginia in the 40s. I went with you on that part.
Okay, so I'll say this. I'm doing it partly as motivation to myself. I guess. I don't know.
A little reverse psychology.
Yeah.
I understand that. I've been known to use that a time or two, but for me, I was thinking about it when West Virginia has played FCS teams in the past with Neil Brown. They've had success and they've scored a lot of points, usually over 50. I think against Eastern Kentucky, they scored over 50. I know they had 66, I believe it was, against LIU last year. And then Neil Brown, has success against FCS opponents. He's 8-0 as a head coach. So I think West Virginia will, do what they can to put this team away. But I think, the new clock rules, West Virginia being a predominantly run team, and what looks like this opponent here, Duquesne being a predominantly run team as well, could lead to fewer possessions. So I don't think West Virginia will cross the 50-point threshold against this FCS opponent. I got them in the 40s like you did there, Steven. I've got it West Virginia 45, Duquesne 14. I think this defense comes out and makes a statement.
I'm hoping you're right.
Keep them under 20.
Yeah, I'm hoping you're right. Buddy.
Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed. So there's our main segment here on season 6, episode 163, breaking down this matchup against Duquesne, previewing a little bit, and of course providing our key to victory and score predictions as we always do. But to wrap up here, this episode of the Country Roads Webcast, we wanted to take a little bit of a look around the Big 12, talk about some games happening around the conference, and throw our picks out there for some games here. So having said that, let's do that here in our final segment, which we're calling Around the Big 12. All right, here we are with our final segment where we're going to take a look around the Big 12 coming up in week 2 and talk a little bit about these matchups. Starting on Friday night, September 8th, Kansas is taking on Illinois as Illinois travels into Lawrence for the 7:30 kickoff. Going to be on ESPN2 there. Kansas, Illinois. I'm rolling with the Jayhawks. You know, I think Jalen Daniels, if he's back, is going to show out. But if not, I like what Jason Bean does there with that offense still yet. And I think that Lance Leipold continues his hot little run, gets another win there.
Yeah, I really like what KU did the last week, but you know, and if Jaden Daniels comes back, golly, I can't talk tonight. If he comes back, then I think that it'll be a lot closer game. But I still like Illinois, man. They got a pretty good team this year, and I like their brand of football. I'm picking them in this game.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. Moving on to Saturday, where we have a full slate here where all of the other games take place. Kansas playing the lone weekday game. We've already talked about the Mountaineers and Duquesne, but early in the noon kickoffs, we've got 2 noon games here. Utah traveling to Waco to take on Baylor. Baylor, of course, coming off the upset loss to Texas State last week. And Utah, we saw what they did against Florida. I mean, there's no way I'm not taking Utah on this one. I think Baylor's in the danger zone of getting beat handily at home in this one. What do you think, Steven?
Yeah, there's no way I can disagree with you on this one, man. Especially is Cam Rising back for this one? I haven't heard yet.
I haven't heard yet, but I would suspect that Cam Rising and that tight end is back probably.
Yeah, if they get both of them back, then yeah, Baylor better look out. But yeah, I think Utah is just too darn good for Baylor to handle.
Agreed on that one, at least then. And then the other noon kick in the Big 12, of course, taking place in Manhattan, Kansas on Fox Sports 1. And Troy traveling to Kansas State. What do you think there, Steven?
Kansas State's looking pretty darn good this year. I got to ride with them in this one, man.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've heard me talk this offseason, you know Kansas State's my dark horse, my favorite to win the Big 12. I think they got a good chance to repeat as conference champions, riding with them there as well. So in agreement again, BYU and Southern Utah, their BYU taking place at home, 3:00. That's on ESPN Plus as well, just like the Mountaineers will be this weekend. Obviously, taking BYU there. Steven, any objections?
Not because I think they'll win, but just because I hate the quarterback. I'm picking Southern Utah.
I don't blame you. I'm not a fan of him either. So
I think the BYU will win that game, but yeah.
Okay, I like it. Oh, and then we got the Iowa State rivalry here, the old Cyhawk, coming up at 3:30. This time it's in Ames, though, so that's good news there. We know that's a tough place to play. Iowa State, I think a lot of people were expecting to, really have a down year after, the gambling scandal, losing Hunter Deckers. But week 1, I think they, surprised some people. Rocco Becht, the son of Anthony Becht, and got the win there. But taking on Iowa, it's always a tough matchup for them. Couldn't get over the hump for the longest time. Last year, finally did, playing on Fox at 3:30. Steven, I think the Iowa State's going to do it, man. I think they're going to surprise people. They're going to pull it off again. I'm going to ride with the Big 12, ride with the conference, taking on the Big 10 and getting the win. Cyclones pulling it off. What do you think?
Well, I thought I was going to throw a shock factor in there, man, but I actually agree with you, man. And I think all of us here in Mountaineer Nation know just how magical Jack Trice can be. And I can only imagine how much that amplifies whenever they're playing, whenever Iowa comes to town. So I actually like the Cyclones in this one.
I like it. I like it. In agreement yet again. And then next up, we have future ACC member SMU heading into Norman, Oklahoma for the 6 p.m. kick on ESPN Plus. I know it feels weird to say, doesn't it?
I mean, I'm sorry. I hate to laugh at it, but I just can't. I can't wrap my head around it just yet.
It's awkward.
Yeah, it's very awkward to be in college football at this time.
Yeah. What a world. What a world. But having said that, SMU, though, has had a good squad in recent years. You think they got any chance against the Sooners?
If they were not playing in Norman, Oklahoma, I would say yes, but I don't think so. I think the Oklahoma Sooners are out to prove a point this year. I think Brent Venables is probably out to prove a point this year. If I'm anybody in the Big 12 that's on their schedule this year, I'm watching out, including us.
Right on. Right on. I've got Oklahoma as well. I'm pretty high on them this year. I think that they're going to bounce back in a pretty big way. They looked good in week 1.
Yeah.
They continue it, get a win over SMU, I think. We talked about our Mountaineers there. 6 p.m. kickoff. We're going to be on ESPN Plus against Duquesne there at Mountaineer Field, of course. So next up on the slate, Cincinnati, one of the newcomers, is taking on that team up north there in Pittsburgh that we'll see in week 3. That's going to be a 6:30 kick, and that's going to be televised on the CW. Yes, the ACC has their contract with CW this year. They'll have some of their games on there, and this is the debut of that. Cincinnati traveling to Pitt, 6:30 kick there on the CW. Steven, why don't you give me your pick first?
Hey, go Bearcats, buddy. Go Bearcats.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Go Fighting Travis Kelce's.
Yeah, no way I'm picking Pitt. So, they might win the game, but I'm going Cincinnati. Back-to-back Big 12 loss is coming for Pitt. Going to lose Cincinnati and then lose WVU in week 3. That's what I'm going with. Next up on the slate, another good one. Last year, these two teams matched up, and it was a great game. And this year, they're matching up in Lubbock, and that is Oregon from the Pac-12 currently, anyway, coming to Texas Tech, where they will play at 7 o'clock p.m. there on Fox. I'm going to go ahead and say Texas Tech surprises and bounces back. They struggled, that week 1 upset to Wyoming at Wyoming. Everyone is saying Oregon's going to dominate them. I think Texas Tech, surprises, and we see maybe a little bit more of the Texas Tech team we were expecting to see instead of the one that got shocked in week 1. Let's still remember this is a Texas Tech team with, I think, 15 or 16 super seniors on the squad. So I think they're more than capable of facing adversity and bouncing back. I'm going to ride with the Red Raiders. Steven, what do you got?
I'm actually going to disagree with you. I do think it'll be a lot closer game than the blowout that people are predicting. But Oregon has too much firepower, man. They put up a lot of points last week on Portland State. I know it was Portland State, but putting up 81 points is impressive, and to do so in a shutout game is also even more impressive. I think it'll be a lot closer game, but I still think Oregon goes down there and beats them in Lubbock.
That's probably the more likely scenario. I'm kind of going out on a limb a little bit, so don't blame me at all. Then next up, another 7 p.m. kick. This one's actually being televised on the NFL Network, funny enough, but Houston traveling to Rice to take on the Owls there. Both those teams there in the state of Texas. JT Daniels taking on Dana Holgorsen. Steven, what's your pick in this one?
Hurts my heart, man, because I really want, not just because of Houston's head coach, but I really wanted to go with JT. I don't really have a sour taste in my mouth with JT Daniels. I liked him as a quarterback for a little while, and I don't think he did a horrible job. So I really like to root for him, but I still think Houston's going to beat him.
Yeah, unfortunately, I got to agree with you. Houston's probably going to get it done there. Ride with them as well. And then we got another 7 p.m. kick, and it's UCF traveling to Idaho to take on Boise State on the blue turf there on Fox Sports 1. I'm going to ride with UCF in this one. We talked about John Reese Plumlee in the past. Like him a lot. Like Gus Malzahn's offense. Always been a fan of it, since he first, started coming up many moons ago now, I guess. But UCF now in the conference, and I think they get it done against Boise State.
Yeah, I agree with you. I remember back in the day whenever I forget what year around it was. It was before Auburn had hired Gus Malzahn, and I had started a fan page for them to bring him to WVU. And for a while, I thought it was going to actually work. and I still think that it might have panned out a little bit better for West Virginia if they would have done so.
He was the top of my candidate list before we got Dana.
Yeah, same here. So I like him. They're like you said, John Reese Plumlee, their quarterback is an absolute dog. He's a great dual threat quarterback. So I think UCF will go up there and get it done.
We're going to skip the next one. We'll save it for last. That's the big game of the week, of course.
Okay.
Nichols, TCU, 8:00 kick, ESPN Plus. Obviously, I think TCU bounces back, gets back on the winning track. You agree?
Yeah. I don't think that there's if they are bouncing off of a national championship season and they start the season 0-2 against a school like Nichols, then there's some issues.
Yeah, definitely would be major issues if that was the case. But then we get Oklahoma State traveling out to the West Coast, which hopefully they get used to because they're facing future Big 12 member Arizona State. They're at 10:30 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. Late kick for the Cowboys. Traveling out that far, might be tough with the travel. Who you taking?
I actually like Arizona State in this game.
Mm-hmm.
That's honestly without knowing hardly anything to know about either of the schools. I'm going with Arizona State because of the late kickoff and because of its a new environment. And it seems to me like these future Big 12 matchups with the kind of like Colorado and TCU this past week.
Utah, Baylor.
These schools have more or less a chip on their shoulder coming into a new conference, and I think that they are playing with that chip on their shoulder in those games. So for that reason, I like Arizona State.
Yeah, I don't blame you, but I'm gonna hit you with the Lee Corso. Not so fast, my friend, because you can never bet against Mike Gundy. You just can't do it. So for that reason, I got to ride with Oklahoma State. But that brings us to our last one, the matchup of the week. Probably not only in the Big 12 conference here, at least for one more year before it becomes an SEC conference matchup. We got a Big 12 team involved in this game. And that, of course, is the 7 p.m. contest going to be on ESPN as Texas travels to Tuscaloosa to take on Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide. Steven, this should be a fun game. Texas loaded with talent as always, but this is the year everyone says they're, finally going to put it together, projected as favorites in the conference. But are they ready for Alabama? Can they go there and beat them?
Well, I'll tell you something. I like Texas's talent. I like their quarterback room. I think they're probably one of the most famous quarterback rooms in the entire country right now. I think that they're going to go down there and it's going to be, just as good of a game as it has been in the last 2 years that we've watched this game. But I think Bama's going to beat them. I got the Bama boys.
Yeah. You got to roll with the 304 guy, Nick Saban. Going to get it done like he always does for the most part. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Texas is probably going to win a lot of games this season, but unfortunately this won't be one of them. But will be one of the better non-conference games that we see a Big 12 team play this season, outside of the backyard brawl, of course, which tops them all. But still, game I'm looking forward to. Definitely going to try and, tune into it a little bit, maybe flip back and forth between the WVU Duquesne game and it, on some commercials between WVU and Duquesne. Check this out a little bit, keep up with the score because I think it'll be an interesting contest. Texas certainly has a good shot, and they're going to give Alabama their best shot, but I'm with you. I'm going with the Crimson Tide. So there's a look at the Big 12 slate coming up in week 2 here as we enter the second season of the 2023 season. West Virginia's game coming up Saturday, September 9th, 6:00 p.m. kick. You can watch it on ESPN Plus, or of course, listen to Tony Caridi on the radio call, always doing a great job there. But having said that, Steven, we've talked a little Mountaineer news, discussed the matchups, even gave our key to victory and score predictions, as always, and as a bonus, made some picks around the Big 12. But anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to add in here, or any final thoughts you got?
Nope. Always excited to get back up there and be home, man. I'm excited to see everybody at the stadium and just be where I feel happiest in life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Until I
100%
don't.
agree with you. Absolutely, man. Get to go back home, right? Home sweet home there.
Absolutely.
Mountaineer Field, Milan Puskar Stadium in Morgantown. And it's going to be great atmosphere, I think, for this home opener. And West Virginia is 21-2 in home openers since 2000. So hopefully we see that increased to 22-2 coming up this Saturday as they take on Duquesne and hope to remain undefeated against FCS foes. Me and Steven both believe that they will do so, but be sure to let us know your score prediction down in the comments below. We really appreciate those interactions as we continue to try and grow the Country Roads Webcast community throughout Mountaineer Nation. And one of the best ways you can help us do that is to subscribe, whether that's here on YouTube, that being ours, or the WV Sports Now channel, as you can find our content there, and on the web at wvsportsnow.com, or subscribe on the podcast platform if you're tuned in on the audio side. We appreciate that. Give us a follow on social media, Country Roads Webcast on Facebook and Instagram, and you can follow the podcast on X/Twitter at WVU Country Roads. Follow Steven there on X at Pit Still Sucks. Follow me at Cruise Control WV. We appreciate you tuning in here to Season 6, Episode 163, our Duquesne Preview and Predictions episode. We'll be back following the game to talk about it post-game, streaming live here, immediately following the game on YouTube. And then, of course, we'll come back at you on the podcast side here with episode 164, in which we'll do our Duquesne review and reaction. Hopefully it's coming after a Mountaineer football win as we continue to progress through this 2023 WVU football season, hoping for a fun game as West Virginia looks to get their first win of the year. Having said that, as always, for Steven, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go, Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those